Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and something I always see come up in the community. You see it online. Hell, you even saw it in the Stronger documentary with Joe DeFranco's guy one time. People always talk about training until they puke, or particularly on leg day. You know, you see all the leg day memes. See, I was talking about puking and everything, and the whole thing here is that this is absolutely ridiculous, and we're going to talk about why here in a minute, and why it's actually potentially counterproductive to training, and shows why it's just a silly concept and that people need to quit doing stupid stuff in the gym. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on a little bit of crafting, and let's talk about this. Alright, cliff notes. Training until you puke. For the people who don't like the longer videos, they don't want more detail. Basically, if you're training till you puke, you probably have no plan for progressive overload. You're just coming in and training stupid hard with stupid volume and doing supersets and all sorts of goofy stuff with no idea what you're doing, or you're probably eating inappropriate amounts of foods with too many stimulants before you train, and it's just totally counterproductive. Lack of progress, training in a way that messes with your own recovery so you can't train again as often is not conducive to maximum gains. Furthermore, doing anything till you puke is never fun. It doesn't matter whether it's training, drinking alcohol, or anything else. Puking is not an enjoyable activity. If you're training, you're generally doing it because you want to see improvements in yourself or because you enjoy doing it. Puking is counterproductive to both. Now let's go into a little more detail here. What do I mean by lack of planned progression? Well, this comes down to understanding the difference between acute versus chronic training response. And something people don't always grasp. They want to come in sometimes and train so hard that they throw up. But the thing is, if you're training hard without a plan, you're not doing much good, because again, what is the key to muscle growth and strength? Progressive overload. Again, as I've said over and over and over, all the studies over the years have confirmed this, but the ancient Greeks were so intelligent in their day that these ancient Greek philosophers and experts back then figured this out 2,500 years ago. They even knew it back then. Maybe there's a reason some of the statues in art, they look the way they do. These were actually smart men who've studied the human body the best they could, and they actually figured out a lot of things. They were not stupid people. They even knew progressive overload was the key. And progressive overload is not about an acute training response, meaning if you come in and you train and train and train and you do an insane amount of work for a given muscle group or exercise for hours and hours on end, do you honestly think that you stimulate additional growth from it any more than if you had just added 5 pounds to your main squat set? Or were able to do an extra rep with the heaviest weight you've been doing? Let's say you had a weight you've been able to do 8 reps with and you're able to do 9 that day. If you've done that already, you've already stimulated most of the growth you're going to get out of a training session. So if you come in and do an extra hour of work or supersets and drop sets and everything behind it, you don't actually really get any extra muscle out of it. There's a very, very limited amount of muscle you can stimulate and grow from in one training session. And the more muscle you have and the longer you've been training, the smaller that amount becomes. You can stimulate less and less and less the bigger you get, because one, it requires much higher training loads, but two, the body becomes more resistant to gaining muscle over time. And so if you've been training 6 months already and most of your noob gains are gone, you're going to gain very, very little muscle ever from a single training session, like not enough to ever measure on a scale. You're never going to gain a full ounce of muscle from a single training session or some crazy high number like that. Never going to happen. Again, barring noob gains. Once you do those noob gains, never going to happen. So this idea that you're going to come in and just train till you vomit with a bunch of crazy stuff and make a significant gain, a full ounce of muscle from it, is just silly. So you're subjecting yourself to a lot, to the point to where you vomit or you're extremely sore or can't walk with some of these leg day memes for an amount of muscle that is never going to measure on a scale. Training is about chronic overload and adaptation to chronic stress. Your body doesn't care so much what you do to it in a single session. It cares about what you do to it over 10 sessions, 20 training sessions, 25 training sessions. It cares about the chronic stress that you subject it to, and it responds to increasing demands over time. So the person who comes in and for 3 years straight consistently trains a little harder, and harder is relative. Harder, I mean in terms of the weight on the bar or the reps or the sets that you're doing. It doesn't mean perceived exertion. You could come in and train at what you would consider to be 70% perceived exertion every workout, but if you do it consistently for 3 years straight, you're going to make more progress than the guy who comes in and trains till he pukes once a week for a year straight. And then he gets burned out and quits and backs off. You're going to gain more than he will due to consistency. Making progress and gaining muscle is not about the short term. It is about the repeat exposure to increasing training stimulus month after month, year after year. That is how you get bigger. That's how you reach your maximum potential. It's about the tortoise and the hare. That's a good way to look at it. The tortoise and the hare analogy, that story is an amazing analogy if you apply it to gaining muscle, because it's exactly the same. You know, the hare tries to run and run and run and train so hard that he burns out and gets tired, and the tortoise just treads along. And even though he's starting out slower, what he's doing, he's pacing himself over time, and eventually he ends up winning the race and getting to the goal more quickly than the hare does. Well, people who come in and train like that and try to be all hardcore, they don't understand that. It's never about what you do in a single training session. You're never going to make significant gains from a single training session. Something people need to understand. It's about the long-term consistency, adding 0.5% here, 0.5% there for months and years on end. That's how you reach the goal. And trying to speed that up by training till you're exhausted doesn't help. And we're going to get to another point there. You actually, if your goal was to gain maximum muscle mass and strength, not just good gains, because most of us would be happy with good gains. The people who are trying to gain maximum size don't train that way. Why? Because when you train that way, it leaves you sore, it leaves you tired, it cuts into your recovery. It reduces how quickly you can train again. Well, people who don't take drugs of any type, when you train a muscle, it only has a growth window of about 28 to 48 hours. It stops growing completely after that. Not only does it stop growing completely after that, there's actually studies that show that the recovery process itself reduces growth time, meaning the amount of time it takes your body to heal all the micro traumas and everything that happen as a result of the training, you don't grow during that window either. Now that's an interesting point, because if you push out the adaptation, meaning you can't walk the next day, you're too sore to walk the next day, or you're really sore trying to walk up and down stairs, and you've got so much micro trauma that it impedes your ability to function, your body's probably repairing that. So if it takes your body 24 hours to repair that, and it takes someone else 8 hours to repair theirs, and you only have, say, a 40-hour growth window, which guy's going to gain more muscle? The guy who repaired the trauma more quickly, because he has more growth time to where his body's done repairing the micro traumas, and now it can go to adding extra tissue proteins to respond. That person actually will probably gain a little more muscle mass from that one training session. He didn't work nearly as hard, but he was consistent. He stimulated new growth in a way that it was barely harder than what he had done before. The body will grow as a response to that. Now, on top of it, if you're so exhausted from the training that you can't train that muscle group again for 4 or 5 days, what happens to your growth time? Your growth window is 48 hours at the most. Other guy can come in and do it again in 2 or 3 days, and maybe even progress a little bit and grow even more. If you're having to wait 4 or 5 days or a whole week before you could, say, train your legs again or your chest again, you're getting less growth time every week, which is fine if you don't care about maximum gains, and a lot of people don't. But people who are training till they puke or till they're sore and exhausted probably care about maximum gains. They're shooting themselves in the foot. It's being able to come in and train again sooner and add a new training stimulus and progress, because progressive overload is the key to muscle growth, not training till you're exhausted and you have so many micro tears in a muscle that you can barely move or function. That's not how you grow. You grow by pushing your body just a little further than it previously did so that it's forced to adapt to keep up. And you can do it repeatedly over and over and over. Now, the other thing to consider here, the loss of nutrients. If someone is actually training till they puke, which is again our extreme example, but people brag about it like it's a good thing or a cool thing sometimes. Man, I trained till I puke. I threw up my protein shake. Well, what was the point of that protein shake if you just threw it up? Maybe you're training excessively hard and stupidly with no program, no planned progression, or maybe you're eating the wrong foods before you train. But either way, if you're vomiting, you're losing nutrients. You're using nutrients that you could have been using to help fuel your training. More importantly, digestion slows way down for a couple hours after you train. So your post-workout nutrition doesn't help you as much as you think it does. The food you ate beforehand actually starts to become important for glycogen replenishment, recovery, things like that. If you're sitting here vomiting up food, and then you've got to wait to get new food in because you've lost stomach acid, you've disrupted your whole GI tract, you're making less progress as a result. So I would say, if anything, if you start getting sick to your stomach when you're training, that's when you quit. You don't say, I'm going to grind out 3 more reps and puke. I'm going to do another set. No, you quit. Why would you want to lose nutrition? You're actually reducing recovery and muscle growth. It's just stupid. And again, people always want to be hardcore, and that's why things like Rich Piana can sell ideas like an 8-hour arm workout and his 5% thing, because people want to feel like they're being hardcore. But 9 out of 10 times, the people who think that they're doing something hardcore actually doing something really stupid that might actually hurt their progress, because they don't seem to understand it's not about being hardcore, it's about consistency. The tortoise and the hare. When it comes to muscle gains and progress in the gym, the tortoise is going to win every single time as long as he is consistent and moving towards that goal. And that's another reason, another way it's put. You hear a lot of people who've been training for many years who have amazing progress. They use another term. And I think it's really synonymous. And they always say it's about the journey, not the destination. Because the people who focus on it and just enjoy it and just train consistently because it's a passion of theirs and they love doing it, tend to get a lot further than the people who go 100% all the time and are so focused on the goal and the destination instead of just enjoying the journey to get there and doing enjoyable training and just doing it month after month, year after year. Focusing on the journey and enjoying it is going to keep you more consistent and going to get you to your goal better in the long term if you're just consistent with that. And again, it's because you enjoy the journey and you don't focus on the destination. You let the destination get there when it happens. And when you reach that destination, because you enjoy the journey, you're going to set off towards a new destination. You know, because sometimes you reach and surpass your goals and then you set new ones, or you just keep going and keep training and just see where the destination ends up being, rather than focusing on something that you may or may not be able to achieve, or you might surpass or never reach. Too much focus on the destination, again, can make you burn out when you don't reach exactly what you want to reach. But that journey, just focusing on that and getting there because you enjoy what you do, you're going to end up where you're going to be capable of ending up, rather than overshoot or undershoot what you're really capable of doing. All right, guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.